have only one hand, so I'm going to put this here. Good morning and welcome to the first ever Boston University College of Communication Sports Communication Summit Play It Forward Breakfast with Champions. I'm thrilled to have you all here and very thrilled to have our esteemed group of panelists. Now, even though the Jacobs family business is Delaware North, one of the world's largest hospitality and food service businesses, when you think of the Jacobs family, you think of the Boston Bruins, and we are thrilled to have with us the CEO of the Bruins, Charlie Jacobs.
Morning.
Now, we've always known that Tom Werner is an original. After all, how many people are members of the Television Academy Hall of Fame and also have a World Series ring? The chairman of the Red Sox, Tom Werner. And speaking of Hall of Famers, it's the highest honor that any player in any sport, in any generation can have. And we have a tremendous one with us today, Andre Tippett, representing the Patriots. And of course, the Celtics. We all know that Lucky the Leprechaun is the mascot. So who better than the great Irishman himself, Sean Sullivan? Show them your socks in case they can't see, just in case. Fully in green, Sean Sullivan, the Chief Marketing Officer of the Boston Celtics. All right, so growing up in Buffalo, New York, and by the way, you've got some explaining to do, Red Sox growing up in New York, growing up in New Jersey, growing up in New Hampshire. When you're growing up, what's one experience that you had that you can look back on and say, yeah, you know what? That sort of has set me up for my success today.
I'll jump in on that one. Probably the one day that I can remember when I was like, God, this is Boston's an incredible sports town. I was, so I grew up in New Hampshire, and trying to get tickets back to the Garden at that time, that was the '80s Celtics, was almost next to impossible. And so my dad was fortunate enough to get, I think at the time it was preseason tickets or maybe early regular season tickets, but it was the day that Flutie threw the pass in the Orange Bowl, and they flashed it up on the just the message board at the time because there wasn't video boards, and the buzz that went around that place with people trying to figure it out, and it sort of came back from the media because the media down on press row saw it, and it worked its way back up. But that combination of seeing just sort of the magic of sports in Boston and then hearing about it being at a game at the Boston Garden, that's sort of when the light bulb went off for me that, this is where I want to be.
Well, I probably have to say because of being a former player, in high school, growing up in New Jersey, growing up in Newark, New Jersey, and then having the opportunity to play at the Meadowlands. My senior year, state championship, the largest capacity that state playoff had ever had. I believe it was 43,000 people there. And for me, wanting to go on to the next level, playing at the Meadowlands kind of set me on my path, and it was amazing. And I to this day, I still, 56 years old, and I still think about that. We host high school state championship games at the Gillette Stadium, and I know every one of those guys when they step on the field, what they're going through.
That's pretty close because your son has played in one too.
And we were fortunate to play at Fenway this year. It was really cool watching my son play there. So he's had some great experiences. So he knows exactly how I feel when I talk about these things.
That's pretty cool.
Well, I was a freshman at Harvard in 1967. And I've always loved baseball, and I had never been to Fenway Park, and I was doing a visual studies class at college, and wanted to make a movie about opening day at Fenway Park, and the only reason I wanted to make a movie is because I wanted to get a ticket. So I convinced the administration to let me make a movie, and I got into Fenway Park a couple of days before opening day and made a 12-minute movie about the opening of the baseball season. And what was great about it was when we acquired the the club in 2002 when people said we were outsiders, I could point to this movie that I'd made in 1967 and say, well, wait a minute, you know, I've been in love with Fenway Park longer than many of you.
I'd have to say, listen, growing up in the family, and as you'd mentioned, our business, what we do in terms of hospitality across the country, I've always had a real passion for sports, always. But in high school in particular, my trips here to Massachusetts and to the Garden really, frankly, just pushed me over the edge, knowing that I wanted to work in the National Hockey League. Frankly, to the point where after college, not necessarily working for the Bruins, but going to work for another NHL club so I could get some experience from a different perspective.
Thank you for that. So 35. 35 is the number of titles that your 4 franchises hold. 17, 8, 6, 4. So aside from the winning tradition, what is it that you think makes Boston sports so special, that makes Boston such a great sports town? Especially since none of you is actually from Boston, but you're the closest. But what is it that makes Boston special, do you guys think?
I usually share this with our rookies every year. I said, this is the one place that you come to you can't hide from. Sports fans here are the most dedicated, educated, and because of the winning franchises, people know their business. And so I tell the players, you better talk the talk, you better be able to walk the walk, because people will call you out. They will call you out on sports radio, TV, at the game, and they will follow you on Twitter and ridicule you. So
No, ridicule?
I think the passion, because there's been so much tradition around here. I mean, between the Celtics and the Bruins and you know, all the teams that have done so many things. And this is of late, and this isn't something that, you know, we're pulling back from 30 years ago. Teams are winning now, and they're all showing this special formula, smarter decisions, smarter people working in organizations, and it's amazing.
Well, I think it's easier for me to hide than Andre. There is a level of loyalty and intelligence, and you know, having been involved in a sports team in San Diego, and I think all Southern California, I think that sports just is not as important as Boston, and I think about the way that after the Marathon Day bombing, and I think we're all thinking about that because of the Marathon Day on Monday, the way that the Boston Red Sox helped heal the community was in large part due to the connection that the sports teams have towards this community. And when David Ortiz spoke, he spoke for all of us in terms of don't mess around with our city. He said it a little more eloquently, but
I would echo Tom's sentiment. It's, in my opinion, having been and worked in other markets, sports is, you know, dare I say, very close to religion in this market. It's tribal, it's communal. We share a passion, as Andre alluded to. We have such a knowledgeable fan base, and the passion just, it comes through in waves. Again, there is no hiding. There is no, and I personally can't listen to talk radio. I just get, it's too much for me, or Twitter. For my own personal health, I have to stay away from some of those. But I do get that sense that this is such a unique market because of the passion that we share for our clubs in this market.
Yeah, the thing that jumps out to me, you know, growing up close to Boston, and then just being in this market and being with the Celtics for, you know, this is my 20th season, is sort of the bond that the teams have in this market, and it's so different from other markets. You know, I'll go to the NBA meetings, and they'll say to me, how do you have that relationship with the Patriots, the Red Sox, the Bruins? And, you know, I do think it starts at the ownership level. You know, the owners of each of the teams are have great relationships. The executives at the teams have great relationships. There's a constant sharing of ideas between the organizations on what's working, what's not working, and the support that's there. You see it. You see it when each of the teams wins a championship. The timing's been there where when the Red Sox win the World Series, it's right around our opening night. So they'll bring the trophy in. We'll have the Patriots in. We just did jersey exchanges the other night with some of the Bruins players at our game, and you don't get that in other markets. And so that bond that's there between the teams is very special.
Yeah, no, that's a really important thing, and it's one of the things I've always been curious about, because the reality is that there's only so much money to go around for fans, for them to spend on tickets, the game experience, things of that nature. But as cooperative as you all are, how competitive are you as well?
Well, I would say that I root for all of our success, and there's that expression that a rising tide carries all boats. If people are going to a Bruins game or a Celtics game or a Patriots game and they're having a good time, then they're going to want to come back. And I think we're all sensitive to the cost of tickets, but we all have programs and initiatives to make sure that it's as affordable as it can be. And I think that when people are reading the sports pages, that's a good thing, because when teams are winning, everybody's mood is better.
The other thing I think is interesting about the area is it's New England. There may be one team that has New England in its name, but you draw from such a wide base. And isn't that something that really differentiates this market as well?
Absolutely. I would say, venture to guess, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, of course, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and virtually half of Connecticut I consider to be Boston Bruins, Boston Red Sox,
the
and Reds.
Rangers, the Jets, the Giants lines, right?
So appropriately, that's really what we would consider our sphere of influence, and get into more detail than probably you would care to hear about. But we really do try to touch all parts of the spoke when we talk about the Boston Bruins brand specifically. And if you think about our spoke to be, we consider Boston to be in the middle, but all of those spokes matter to us, and how we touch those communities and how we interact with our fan base in each of those different markets.
I think that we feel the same way, especially from a community outreach. And what we do from the Patriot standpoint is we touch the New England region. We do something in every state, and it isn't just, okay, we're going to do a one-time deal. This is our yearly outreach that we do. We look to make our mark. And just like the Celtics is in Connecticut, we kind of have that fine line in Connecticut, because you got the Jets and the Giants that we're dealing with. So we don't have a whole lot to say there. But the rest of the area, though, we really try to hit it, and we do a consistent basis.
Yeah, we do as well. The other thing that jumps out to me, when you watch any of the teams up here at an away game, is the amount of Boston jerseys that are in the stands. The support. It seems like, I think it was the Patriots played in San Diego last year, and it was like a home game. And you watch a Red Sox game when they're on the road, or the Bruins when they're on the road, and the fan base of all four teams that are around the country is, I think, unparalleled.
I used to have a boss, the late great Steve Sable, who was the president of NFL Films, and he would keep these cards that he would take things that he'd read in the New York Times or wherever he would read, and he would use them for various films that he was making. And no, students, this is not in any way encouraging plagiarism, I want you to know. But he used to say to me, Andrea, if you must steal, steal from Tiffany's. So, with that in mind, when you look at each other's franchises, leagues, teams, what's one thing you'd like to take from another team or a league that you'd like to incorporate into yours?
I'd love to be able to play a game at Fenway.
Well, we're just networking here, so we'll see if the chairman can get this arranged.
No, I don't think the weather would help out, but I think it was.
A new version of the Winter Classic.
Yeah, exactly. The Red Sox a couple years ago, they were sort of one of the first teams to change from viewing their ticket holders as calling them season ticket holders, and made them more of a member type model. And then I think some MLS teams grabbed from that, and we really looked at it, just because of the competition to get somebody to engage with you, come back to you, buy from you. You don't always want to year to year be so concerned about renewals and things like that. And I think that tweak that was made by them, you're seeing it a lot across a lot of teams at this point.
I would say the same. We're always looking to give people a great experience and trying to take what we see from around the league, try to see what we do with our partners in the Boston area and see what they're doing, and we try to make sure that people want to come back and want to experience being out in Foxborough.
I would say that I am envious of the star power of many of the athletes in the NBA. I know that people spend more and more time on social media, and I think baseball can do a better job in interacting with its fan base to create more access to players. And when I think of not just LeBron James, but Steph Curry and all the stars of the NBA, and I know because we have a connection with LeBron that he has something like 50 million Twitter followers, and David Ortiz has 2 or 3 million, and I think baseball can do a better job in creating interest with the fan base on social media.
That's interesting that you mentioned the followers and social media, Tom. We at the Boston Bruins and at the Garden have a group of 18 associates that are charged, aside from their day-to-day jobs, to identify what we call a best practices, and I title it the Best Practices Committee, and their charge is to identify sort of best trends in market, but also identify across indoor arenas, so whether it be basketball or hockey or a venue that perhaps hosts both basketball and hockey, what's happening in there that we like and want to bring back to the Garden for our home fans to experience. And so what you may have seen if you visited the Garden in the past year is a lot more connectivity, a lot more Wi-Fi, a lot more access to social media to drive that discussion, that social discussion online while you're at the event. That's sort of again, I'll speak to this tribal idea that I was here at the building. I want to share that with my friends, my people within my network online. And so we constantly are trying to, one, assess ourselves, and two, implement new best practices to better the experience at our venue.
Well, you give me a good segue, because I get to play show and tell here for a moment. This is the Future of Sports, which is a project, a blueprint that your family and Delaware North have commissioned. I think Volume 2 might be coming out in the fall. So this is the research blueprint, and it covers everything: sponsorship and advertising, and extreme adventure sports, and health and safety, things of that nature. What you think is going to could be out there for the next 25 years. And some of the ideas, of course, they seem completely crazy now, but in 25 years, I think they're going to be old hat. What do you think you're going to see in each of your sports within the next couple of years? What new thing do you think that you will see?
Speaking with hockey specifically, I think we're due for two technological changes that I think will change the game. One is a chip in the puck to tell and identify whether or not we've crossed the goal line. So it sort of takes that subjectivity out of whether or not the goal is in fact a goal or not a goal. I suppose we'll always have a bit of subjectivity because the ref may call the play dead. The second is cameras at at the blue lines. So for those of you who follow hockey, there's been a lot of controversy this year, this being the first year, by the way, that we've implemented this coach's challenge. And the coach's challenge has taken time and frankly, speed of play out of the game in terms of how a game used to be 2 hours and 15 to 2 hours and 30 minutes. Coach's challenge could take up to 5 to 10 minutes if there's two of them. So we've implemented this new coach's challenge cameras, and we're going to take those calls out of the referee on the ice's hands and move it back to what we call Hockey Central in Toronto. I think those are two immediate ones. I mean, there's several that I think are on their way besides those, but I can cite those specifically as I think you'll see those next season.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think again, to echo, you'll see the camera angles be used much more. I do think you'll see the use of iPads on the benches across, across sports. I think the players now are growing up, they've grown up in this age. It's, everything's very visual for them. So, as opposed to a coach pulling out a whiteboard and diagramming a play, he may just be able to pop up, a play that they've run in practice, and they can physically or mentally see where they're supposed to be. And I think that leads into, virtual reality for these guys in terms of training and where they're going to go. You've already seen it, with some teams, both in baseball and football. But I think you're going to see that much more across all sports, probably to save legs in their bodies during practice time, but still work their mind.
I have to say, by the way, I must tell you, back in 2000, I'm sitting with then head coach Brian Billick of the Baltimore Ravens, and I say to him, he was one of the first coaches in the NFL to start using the iPad for his players, exactly along the lines of what you're saying, that there's a familiarity factor that players have with this, and they're going to be much more inclined to look at their playbooks if they're actually on iPads than if they're on paper. So I say to him, I know this is crazy, but because I've always kind of been this weird idea person, I said, what if, to try to save the legs and the hitting on players, if at the skill positions in particular, the really reading positions, the quarterback, the safety, the linebacker, if you use virtual reality training, almost like they do with pilot simulation. His brother was an Air Force pilot who did all this stuff. We talked about it. I never did it. Think how rich and successful I could be if I'd invested in that in 2000. But yeah, I mean, virtual reality is no doubt. It's something else. What do you think you're going to see in baseball or football? Because in football, we'll get to you in a minute, Andre. But football, obviously, they're all over the camera angles and things of that nature. What about baseball? Because look, if one of the things, and you've already alluded to a little bit, there is the talk, is baseball a little behind the other sports, certainly in terms of innovation and things of that nature?
Well, I think we'd all agree that the continuing advances in medical science is going to have a huge effect on athletes. That if you looked at the starting 5 pitchers of any baseball team in April and counted the number of starts that they would have at the end of the year, it's most likely that the team that can keep its 5 starters healthy will win the division, because so much time is spent on the DL, and we are all very sensitive to a player getting back as fast as he can without endangering his health. But that I know at the Red Sox that we think that the breakthroughs in medical science and trying to be having the best doctors and the best physios is going to have a direct effect on our record at the end of the year.
We have a group of folks at the stadium that's all they do, is interview people who come in with these ideas, these apps, or different programs that can interact within the stadium, game day. It's amazing. You talk about the iPad, and I still joke with some of the young players. I say, when I played, we're looking at 8mm film. You guys can get the game on iPad now, and I'm still amazed by that. But it just goes to show how far we've gone and how far we've traveled, and it's only going to get crazier.
Yeah, guys can watch the game on the flight home if they want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is interesting. So, look, we talked. You grew up in hockey. I mean, your dad. I don't know if people realize your dad, Jeremy, is the second longest tenured owner in all the 4 major professional sports, 41 years. So, I guess you really grew up in it, and it's great to have 2 owners here.
Andrea, just in that regard, I should mention, I think, unfortunately, as of maybe Monday of this week, he became the longest tenured. Ed Snyder passed away.
No, I know
83.
I did. Mr. Bidwell.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Bidwell is number 2. So
Okay.
yes, the late Ed Snyder was number 1, and then there's Mr. Bidwell. So yeah, no, we do. I'm from Philadelphia. I live with the Broad Street Bullies, so believe me, Mr. Snyder is quite missed. But so it's great to have 2 owners here. What do you really do? I want to know, what do you do? What do you do for a living? We know you own the team. We know you run the team. How hands-on are you? How involved do you get in various decisions that are made? Because, and keep in mind this, how many times do we hear in sports today, ownership has no patience for, so your ownership. How do the decisions get made? How do you deal with this?
Well, I'm sure Charlie's the same. I think that I wouldn't say we micromanage, but to be it's such a competitive industry. All these businesses are in very competitive industries, and you really do have to be on top of everything. And we spend a lot of time dealing with growing revenue, because growing revenue allows us to invest in player payroll. And we all live in Boston, which is the 10th or 11th largest media market, and the Red Sox have generally the 2nd or 3rd highest payroll. And we can do that because we really keep our foot on the pedal at all times. And we have charged Sam Kennedy and his group with creating events outside of the Red Sox to generate revenue. So we have concerts at Fenway Park, and we even had a ski jumping competition, Big Air, at Fenway in February, and it's all towards creating a very healthy business financially, so that you could plow it back and invest in players, and in our situation also Fenway Park.
So, I'm the youngest of 6 children. If you were to ask my siblings what I do, I'm not sure what you'd get, but it certainly would be enough.
What's one thing they would say? Come on, what's one thing?
Well, I am the youngest of 6. I have 2 active siblings in my family's business who are based in Buffalo. I'm fortunate to get as they would refer to, the plum job of getting to be here in Massachusetts, and have been for about 15 years. Like Tom mentioned, our primary driver is sort of driving that top line and revenue and free cash flow. We really do focus on, myself that is, focus on the TD Garden, of course, the Boston Bruins. We have a great new project underway. It's a 2 million square foot real property development, which will be the new front of the TD Garden within the next 36 months. We were fortunate enough to win the bid to operate at City Hall Plaza. And when time and Tom allows me to, I get to get involved with Nesson. So it's a great plate, and it's a wonderful job. But in truth, that's sort of a small portion of the bailiwick of what I do.
You guys obviously know each other fairly well. Any interesting interactions that you've had?
Well, we had, I think some of you remember that the Bruins played the Flyers at Fenway Park on January 1st, a number of years ago, one of the outdoor games. And Charlie and I played in the charity hockey game on January 2nd that I think we sold 35,000 tickets. It was such an exciting thing to see hockey at Fenway. And I said to Charlie, we both suited up, and I said to Charlie, I'd practiced for about 6 weeks with Bobby Orr just to be able to jump on the ice and not fall. And I said to Charlie, when we get to the second shift, because we were on opposite teams, we should throw our gloves down and get into a fight, because that's what people want in hockey. So Charlie was fine about it, And we got to the second shift, and we threw our gloves down, and I started punching Charlie. And Charlie didn't understand because he thought it was like, we were going to like fool around, and I was starting to punch him.
Was he really hitting
And-
you?
Yeah, the ref gave us 2 for dating. I think that's what it was.
Well, actually, what I remember is that after we were pushed apart by the referee, Charlie was saying, "I don't understand this. Why isn't he getting a 5-minute major misconduct penalty?"
What do you think was going to be choreographed or something? You don't take Tom Werner at his word?
Oh, I'll take Tom at his word, absolutely. Won't make that mistake again.
But there is good interaction. There is good interaction amongst you guys.
Absolutely, I think Charlie and his family are remarkable, and
You ever talk to each other about certain decisions that have to be made?
Sure, and we, as Charlie said, we share a partnership in Nesson, so we see each other frequently. But this guy is one of the great and committed people in Boston.
Committed as in
In
he should be
his
committed, or
Yeah,
committed to what?
Take me to GH
yeah,
right
you
now.
better, you want to clarify that? No, I'm only kidding here. But one of the buzzwords that we hear in sports today is player safety. And you talked a little bit, Tom, you mentioned the idea of what's going to be in the future in terms of dealing with players. How do you manage this issue? Because on one hand, obviously, we're dealing with human beings. They have futures. On the other hand, they are commodities. It's part of your business. It's a touchy, difficult subject to manage, but from each of your vantage points, maybe even start with Andre, who is, obviously, even 22 years after the game, you still look like you could still line up at linebacker. But how do you guys address the issues of player safety?
I remind Bill every year that I'm good for one snap, so I try to keep myself active. As I've been retired for a long time in the game, and I'm seeing and hearing a lot of things that are going on. I think, like us and all the other pro teams around the league, education and improving the game, but more so is the medical education of sports and different things of that sort will be and continue to be the main focus. If you were to pull 30 players and ask them if they had the opportunity, would they do it again? I'm sure I would be the first one to say I would do the same thing over again. But understanding what's happening now, I think the league has done and continue to do, both the league and the PA are trying to improve the education, the practicing on the field, the actual hitting, the surfaces. I mean, everything. It's a long process, and I don't think there's a magic pill of information that you can pass along. But I think the more we listen to the people that are in the position to educate us, I think it's going to make it a better situation for all.
But will those players listen? Players that never want to miss a snap, they never want to miss a shift.
Absolutely.
How it is.
Well, I think our players are getting smarter. I mean, you look at a couple of the players that have retired, that have just up and retired. I mean, still money on the table. Says a lot about the education and understanding what my risks are. Am I willing to take those risks? I think I know for a fact, our guys, our medical staff, our trainers, I watch those guys. I see them all the time. I talk, a lot about different things. As a parent of a son who played the game, I had concerns. And I still have concerns, and I have concerns about myself. I'm 56, and I'm hearing all these things, and every day I wake up, I'm like, what's going to happen? So, I played the game at a high level. I've always thought it was a very violent game, but I understood that going into it. I've always looked at us as modern day gladiators. But it was a game that gave us so much. But I think the education piece of it and both sides understanding how to make it better. So,
The NFL's taken the lead on this. The NHL is a little bit, coming up the path, so to speak. How do you assess this issue?
As Andre alluded to, it's a process. It's iterative. And education, of course, is part of it. And you've seen us, and standards have been raised and changed, and as we've become more and more educated about the sports that have a higher impact, I can tell you that our protocols, which maybe be in place today, may be different for next year as we move forward. They may or may not be. I'd expect that they would. But for a person,
Would you advocate for that?
well, we have for those who don't know, when a player comes in at training camp, they take a baseline test, and if they do get hit or or suspected of being hit, they're asked to go to a quiet room and they're assessed, their cognitive abilities assessed against the baseline test that they took when they arrived at camp. If there's any delta at any point in there, player sits out. There's no question about it. And some are not happy about it, but that's protocol today. There may be different protocols in place. Player safety is something we take very, very seriously. And as you mentioned, we of course compensate them well, but we want to make sure that they live long and healthy lives after their playing days are over. So this is something we take very seriously as a league. Certainly it's very seriously here in Boston at the Garden with the Boston Bruins. And as I say, as people continue to get educated on best practices and how to address this, I see protocols changing.
What concerns do you guys have for the future when it comes to this? Because this is, things are changing in this area pretty quickly.
When Charlie's talking about player safety and making sure that the players live long and productive lives, I'm sure most of you saw that the city of Boston passed a new law banning smokeless tobacco, and that's probably an issue more for baseball players than for football and basketball and hockey players. But obviously, there's all different points of view about this. Some of the players are troubled about this, and to take their side for a minute, they say, "Look, people smoke. How can you stop me from chewing smokeless tobacco?" But I come at this from the point of view of a person who was very friendly with Tony Gwynn, and Tony Gwynn died because of this, and the sooner that we can stop this and educate people that this is going to shorten your life, and we can get players to stop smoking tobacco early in the minor leagues, it becomes less of a problem in the major leagues. But we're going to comply with the law, and I think it's important. I know that it's early days on. The police aren't going to stop the game and arrest somebody for smoking, for chewing. But it's important, and we have to be responsible as owners to encourage people to become educated in this.
Did you guys, just out of curiosity, did you guys have to implement anything or do anything differently during spring training?
Well, the ordinance has been passed in San Francisco and in Boston and I believe New York. So there was nothing going on in Florida, but we're going to comply with it.
Switching gears here for a second, I have a word for you that you'd expect to hear out of my mouth. Women. Women, women, women. There are more women out in this sports realm or wanting to get in the sports realm than ever. In your respective businesses, yes, it's amazing to see Becky Hammond, Nancy Lieberman in the coaching realm, first full-time female coach, assistant coach in the NFL, Catherine Smith, in the Buffalo Bills, scouts in the NBA. Haven't been able to really find anybody in the NHL outside of the typical fields that women have gone into in the past? Public relations, community relations, marketing. How do you get women involved in the basketball, football, baseball, hockey side of things, the operations side of things, if indeed they choose to do that? I'll tell you one thing that I've always felt. Why there aren't more female scouts. Because, number one, women have a different perspective on things. Send a woman out. I'm not saying that she's got to be able to assess the three-point stance of a defensive tackle or the range of a shooter. But you send a woman out, and she is going to come back with a different assessment of a player than a man. It's just different. This isn't any bit of a surprise. So, looking ahead, what's next? How important is it, do you think? Don't give me politically correct answers here about getting one. Where do you think women could be involved in the operations side of your sports, if at all?
I'd say, I mean, you've seen it in the NBA, like you just mentioned. So I think for us, on the basketball side, for example, right now, it would just be, I think they'd be very open to it. Brad and Danny are so competitive. They just want to win, and they want.
And you guys have it easy because there's a league. There's a professional women's league. So you really you have a place where women could come in and be coaches and pretty much get their experience.
Yeah. So I think you'll see it more on the court. I think you'll also see it in sort of behind the scenes in the analytics of breaking down the numbers. I think you'll see that more and more. For us on the business side, we were looking at it the other day. We have more women than men that work on the front office side, on the business side. For us, our VP of ticket sales is a woman. Our head of marketing is a woman. Sponsorship, we have more women than men. So I think, across sports, you're seeing the opportunities there, and I think, across the teams, everybody's looking for the best person to fit an open role. I do agree with, in terms of the hiring for our salespeople. We have an inside sales group that, it's all kids coming out of college right now, and it's entry-level sales. The two people that do the interviews for that are both women, and their ability to recruit sales talent or find sales talent, top-level sales talent for us, has been phenomenal. And I don't, the people that had been in that role before didn't sort of have that same skill set to get the talent for us.
Oh, I got to tell you before I forget. My son, who's 16, one of his best friends, I swear, knows as much hockey as you do. She loves hockey the way I started to love football when I was about 8 years old. And luckily, I had very supportive parents who thought it was okay if cute little Andy liked sports and didn't like Barbie, and it was great. But if little Miss Johnson ever wants to have a career, and she's not here, don't worry, if she ever wants to have a career in hockey, is that a possibility for her?
Absolutely. We have, just to maybe answer your first question, the president of the TD Garden is Amy Latimer. She's one of the top executives in the industry and works hand in hand in day-to-day operations with our club. We have two, as Sean alluded to, we have two analysts. So hockey's moving more and more towards, really frankly, player analytics. And so in our front office, we have two associates, so young female associates that sit down and really sort of do the fact-based number crunching on player performance. And frankly, that's just going to be growing. I see that as a growing trend. So absolutely. And by the way, there are two professional women's hockey leagues in this market as well, with the Pride and the Braves. So there's quite a bit of action here.
Could you ever see an assistant coach? Again, someone who's there because they earned it, not because of their gender, because they shouldn't be there for that. But could you see someone down the road in the next couple of years, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of any of that, of course. It is currently, if you talk about the locker room environment and how that may change with a woman in the room, or I don't see that as being a big hurdle. I really don't.
Well, as you said, the key is somebody who's there because they've earned it. Red Sox do have a woman who's the vice president in baseball operations. But I think the key to this, and I think we would all agree, not just in Boston, everywhere, is to find people who are coming out of college, who want to learn about the business and want to learn about the sports part of it, because that's your pool. And we found this problem, 5 or 10 years ago when we were trying to find managers of color in baseball. And you have to say, well, the way you're going to find more managers of color is to make sure that there are more managers at the single A and double A and triple A level, so you have a pool so that there are ways to bring people along in the organization so that they're prepared when they move up to the big league level. So we all have to do a good job. We have an internship program when people get out of college that a number of women are in, and it has to do with not just with sales and marketing, but baseball operations. But that's the way to find the leaders in 5 and 10 years.
If your daughter, Andre, wanted to get into football in some capacity, what options might there be for her down the road?
I think she knows a lot of people. I'd have her speak to her Uncle Kraft and mention to her that he'd like that
But
she'd
not
be interested.
everybody has an Uncle Robert Kraft.
Absolutely.
Come on now.
They wish they did.
As I'm listening, we have a young lady who's been involved with our football operations for quite a few years, and I have to tell you, I was shocked because I'm going downstairs in the locker room one day and I see this young lady and I'm looking at her and I don't say anything, and I kind of lean towards someone. I'm like, yeah, Bill just hired her. I'm like, to do what? It's football operations. I'm like, wow. And it wasn't, well, she shouldn't be here or anything like that. It was, how cool is that? Because we all have that in the back of our head, some idea how cool it would be to try to help and change things and make opportunities for everybody. Football is a different mentality, a different sport, but I think that, like it's been said, that if you can find someone that's qualified and have the opportunity, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it would be cool. If my daughter was trying to do it, I would tell her the same way. I said, just let's get some resumes out. I'll make a few phone calls, but it's got to be you selling yourself once you get the opportunity to meet with these folks. After that, you're on your own. So.
Last 10 minutes we have, folks have tweeted in some questions. And I just want to go to this one since it's sort of along these lines where we're speaking right now. When will we see a female owner of a professional sports team? And don't just say when she gets enough money, because Oprah's out there.
We've already seen it. Georgia Fontieri. There's many of them.
There are, but that's true. And they could be wives or widows in Oakland, Carol Davis with the Raiders. But a woman who buys a team, just like you bought a team at one point, and Pagliuca and Grauspec bought a team.
I haven't bought a team.
I didn't say you. I did not say you. Steve Pagliuca, and do we think that's? Let's put it this way: would a woman be accepted into the old boys club of all 4 of your major sports?
Well, it certainly would in baseball, and there's no reason why a woman shouldn't be buying a sports franchise. They're extremely rare, and they have a great value, and I think we've all seen values go up, and I think it's a terrific and exciting investment for anybody.
Yeah, I would say why not? Jeannie Buss, who runs the Lakers, the NBA has
should
their.
really be running the Lakers, but I'm biased, so.
She, the NBA Board of Governor meetings are yesterday and today in New York, and she's one of the most respected voices in the room. So.
No doubt, and no question about Jeannie. One of our students wants to know, Mr. Jacobs said he can't listen to the radio, but what about social media? How do you handle the backlash?
Well, for the record, I do listen to the radio.
And you watch Nesson, of course,
I do,
right?
of course,
Okay.
of course.
I want to get you in trouble here.
No, so we really focus on social media as an organization, and it's through all different channels. Stuff that may be emerging today. I was just at the World Congress of Sports on Tuesday, and all the buzz was about the NFL game that's going to be shown on Twitter next year. So and it's a changing landscape, the sort of second screen experience, if you will, that we could talk probably for another hour about. But at our club, we have a director of digital platforms, and her job is to just work on social media and how are we, one, sort of creating our own content to be put up there, but also two, to focus on how you frankly can't control it, but how do you respond to what's put up on those different channels? I refer to them as channels, but they're really platforms, whether it's Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, all the different, and I'm missing about a dozen of the different platforms that we do address. So it's very important to us. It's very important to our brand. And again, I spoke earlier about best practices. We try to stay ahead of this as much as possible and have man and women power addressing this very issue as we speak.
I have to ask from the department of if you must steal from Tiffany's, when you saw the NFL and the new TriCast, which is broadcast cable and social media, and you talked about the game being broadcast, or the Thursday night package being broadcast on Twitter, eyes perk up, antennae elevated by this option here?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated, and I sort of have two different focus groups where I coach basketball and football teams, and I have high school kids in front of me, and then I have middle school kids in front of me a couple times a week, and I'll sort of bounce different ideas off of them, and even the difference between the way high school kids use social media versus middle school kids at this point is fascinating to me. The middle school kids and the sort of freshmen, sophomores, and there's probably some college students here, they live on Snapchat. And so that's an emerging platform for us. The difficulty there with Snapchat is, we want to be able to track it, and you can't. And so that's a challenge. But yeah, without question, I'm fascinated to see how the younger viewers, especially, take to Twitter to watch the football games. Both with my freshmen and my middle schooler right now, they won't sit and watch any game, the full game. They'll, during the NFL, everything's red zone. I say, hey, let's sit down and watch the Patriots game together. They're like, sit and watch a full game? Are you kidding me? They want to watch the red zone. Same thing with the Celtics. They'll, when we're on the road, they'll come down because they've seen something either on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and say, oh, I heard it's a close game. Let's I'm going to actually watch the game with you now. So their attention spans are much different.
Tom, one of our students said, you said baseball could do a better job of capitalizing on its star players like the NBA does. How?
Well, one of the boards that I'm on is a social media site called Uninterrupted, which is a version of the Players Tribune, and there's about 90 professional athletes who are communicating to their fans through Uninterrupted. I don't know how many of you see it, but when LeBron, for example, wanted to announce his Nike contract rather than go on ESPN, he went on Uninterrupted and has a more direct connection to the fans. So I think that this is not in competition with regular media, newspapers and ESPN, but it is a way for the athlete to communicate his message directly to the fan, and I think that's a good thing.
All right, I got to ask you this to finish up. How would your wife or your kids say each of you is after a big win or a tough loss?
very calm.
Either way.
Either way, just, it's, I've done it all, seen it all, and it's like, hey,
Even when you were playing.
even when I was playing, hey, let's move on to the next one and let's figure out how to get it done.
Say a big win. I'm pumped. I mean, I think I woke my wife up when Avery Bradley hit the shot in Cleveland to win the game, and my oldest son was watching, and we were jumping around the living room. But losses, difference between regular season loss and a playoff loss. But you do, now that I've been in it for so long, you do move. You move along and you get focused on the next game, because there's a lot of business to be done to get that game ready. But when you lose in the playoffs and your season's over at that point, that's a very that's a tough feeling.
Finality.
It's finality, and it's the playoffs are such a high and low, and you sort of live and die with every game, in the days in between each game, and when you win it all, there's no feeling like it, and when you lose it all, there's no feeling like it.
This is
I
fresh. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I sometimes feel that all of us here take the losses much more painfully than the players themselves. I think that Andre is right. He probably learned to be calm, but and maybe part of it is that we care so much. But I would say I am not calm when the Red Sox lose.
Like Tom, I'm not calm.
Define not calm for you. I mean, what do you do?
Sean alluded to the finality of losing.
Yeah.
It's tough to swallow. Emotionally, the time, money, and energy that's spent at the beginning of the season and getting everything to the best place that you can at that moment. And listen, there's only one team that walks away happy at the end of the year. We've been fortunate to do that once in my 15 years here. It's tough. We just did our season wrap. Our general manager spoke yesterday, and I could see. I mean, it wears on management, I think, more than players. I truly believe that.
Well, I think you said the key thing, which is that we could sit here for another hour talking about so many different things. You guys are fascinating. It's tremendous that your sentiments and all of your insights, and the fact that you're here for our first time is really, really meaningful. So we thank you so very much. We have a Career Cafe, which is an opportunity to meet and greet some of our panelists. It'll be right behind me in the concourse back here. But you have to be back at 10:45 a.m. sharp for the sports safety panel, where we have 3 experts who will be talking head games, the future of sports safety. Thank you very much. Don't go away.
Cool.